This is the last day of the life I imagined for myself. Natalie Heller Mills says it like a prayer, but it's a diagnosis. She's 32, a Christian influencer, 6 months pregnant with her sixth child, waking in the flawless century farmhouse she spent a fortune making feel like 1,855. Within hours, her 12-year-old asks what Tradwife means and refuses to be filmed for the first time. Her producer quits. Her husband announces his father is pushing him to run for Congress. And Natalie, still smiling, still filming, goes to sleep in the world she curated. Then she wakes in another one entirely. The duvet is gone, her fingers find a hand-stitched quilt. No electricity, no phone, a fireplace lit in the kitchen. Four children in ragged pioneer clothes call her mama, and they are not her children. The doorframe is carved with names and dates. Maeve 1852, 1854. Noah 1853. ABEL 1854, and at her eye level, MAMA 1855. A man who wears her husband's face but carries cold, dead eyes slaps her unconscious when she says "fuck you" the first time that word has ever left her mouth. Her 6-month pregnancy is gone. When she runs into the woods, a steel trap bites into her ankle, and the eldest girl stitches the wound with twine. That girl's name is Mary, the name Natalie and her husband chose for the baby she was carrying, a name she told no one. But Yesteryear takes the Tradwife phenomenon and turns it into a slow, unsparing psychological thriller about a woman who built a pioneer fantasy for millions of followers and woke up trapped inside a brutal, non-performative version of that same fantasy where the labor is real, the violence is real, and every doorframe is a countdown. The book became a New York Times bestseller and ignited a Hollywood bidding war because it refuses to let its protagonist or its reader off the hook. The horror isn't a monster in the woods. It's the self Natalie has been performing for the algorithm, and the possibility that she built this cage with her own hands, lie by lie, and now it intends to keep her. Episode 1. The perfect morning to confrontation with Rena and Natalie's move to a single. Natalie Heller Mills opens her eyes at 5:58, 2 minutes before the alarm. Same as every morning. She is 32 years old, 6 months pregnant with her sixth child, and she has never once hit the snooze button in her life. Discipline, she believes, is something she was born with, overflowing. Motherhood, marriage, building a business, serving God, all of it arrives as a series of tasks to be completed at the right time, in the correct chronological order. She knows it is not that easy for other people, but it really is for her. That is why all those strangers like her so much. That and the money. The money definitely helps. Outside the window, Idaho winter presses against the glass. Snow blankets the apple orchard, the chicken coop, the split rail fences her husband Caleb repaired last autumn. The farm is called Yesteryear Ranch, a name she chose herself, and from her bed, Natalie can hear the first stirrings of the children downstairs, the thump of small feet, a spoon clattering against a bowl. She swings her legs over the side of the mattress, smooths the flannel linen duvet, and begins her gratitude practice. Thank you, Lord, for this bed, this room, this house, this husband, these children, this life. The prayer is as automatic as breathing. Then a wave of nausea rolls through her. Morning sickness, sixth pregnancy, nothing unusual. But something flickers behind her ribs, a sensation she does not name. She presses her palm flat against her belly and waits for it to pass. It does. Downstairs, the kitchen already hums with managed chaos. Stetson, 7 years old, announces through a mouthful of cereal that he needs to build a new enclosure for Sassafras, the newest chicken. Samuel, 9, shoves his younger brother hard enough to knock the spoon out of Stetson's hand. Cereal splatters across the floor. It's my turn to use the nail gun, Samuel says. You'll both use the nail gun, Natalie says, and nods at Nanny Louise, who is already rising with a rag to clean the mess. Jessa, the toddler, smears orange juice across her cheeks and laughs. Natalie watches this scene with the eye of a woman who knows exactly how it will look once edited. People refuse to believe her babies were as amenable as they appeared online. There's no way this is their actual life, the angry women would write. Natalie never replied. A mother's main task, she understood, is to protect her children from the world. The world does not need to see Samuel get physical with his brother. The world needs to see matching linen aprons and a farmhouse table set with sourdough bread and fresh churned butter. And that is what the world sees, because that is what Natalie shows them. Caleb and she call their critics the angry women. The label is useful. It reduces a sprawling mass of anonymous online hostility into something manageable, almost domestic. The angry women leave comments about how her content sets feminism back, how she is brainwashing her daughters, how no one actually lives like this. Natalie reads everyone. She has 6 burner accounts she uses to defend herself, leaving comments that praise her own authenticity, her own patience, her own God-given grace. She keeps the passwords in a notebook in her nightstand drawer. End quote. The morning's content shoot is supposed to be simple. Natalie in the kitchen, kneading dough for the weekly bread, discussing the importance of routine for children. Shannon, her 20-year-old producer, arrives at 7:30 with 2 cameras and a ring light. Shannon is young, obsessive, a former fan who drove from Boise a year ago and never left. She knows Natalie's coffee order, her preferred lighting angles, the exact cadence of her voice when she is about to deliver a line that will perform well. And recently, Shannon has been having dreams. The farm was burning, Shannon says, adjusting the tripod. She says it lightly, like a joke, but her hands are not steady. Everything. The house, the barn, the chicken coop, everything on fire. Natalie pauses with her palm on the dough. Was anyone hurt? That's the weird part. Shannon frowns at the camera display. You and the kids, you were all fine. Standing on the hill watching, safe. A strange, cool certainty settles in Natalie's chest. She does not believe in random dreams. She believes in signs. And if God is sending Shannon a nightmare in which the farm burns while Natalie's family is saved, then God is telling Shannon something about her own hidden misbehavior. Natalie does not know what Shannon has done wrong, not exactly, but she files the thought away, polished and ready. The question Clementine asks. The shoot does not go as planned. Clementine, Natalie's 12-year-old daughter, appears in the bedroom doorway while Natalie is fixing her apron. Clementine stopped calling her mama 3 months ago, right after her birthday, and now says mom like a stranger. The word makes Natalie's eye twitch. It is ugly, short, masculine, nothing like the musical sound of mama. Clementine crosses the room and sits on the bed. Then she asks the question that changes the shape of the morning. What does Tradwife mean? Record scratch. Natalie's hands go still on the apron strings. She watches her daughter through the mirror, keeping her expression soft, her voice light. Who said that word to you? What? Is it bad? Jessa, who has been playing on the bed, throws her head back and giggles. Tradwife. Tradwife. It's not a bad word, Natalie says carefully. It just means a woman who chooses to stay home. A traditional wife. Like me, Clementine's face does not change. So they're making fun of you. It can be used that way, yes. Then why don't you just say you're a stay-at-home mom? Because stay-at-home mom does not sell. Because Tradwife is a brand now, a flag, a signal to the women who want what she has and the women who hate her for having it. Because the angry women have made the word a weapon, and that means it has power. Natalie says none of this. She says, Tradwife just sounds nicer, honey, more old-fashioned. Clementine nods slowly. Natalie cannot tell if she believes her. That uncertainty is new. Before the summer, Clementine would have accepted any answer her mother gave. Before the summer, Clementine still called her mama. Now her daughter looks at her with something that resembles evaluation, and Natalie recognizes the expression because she has worn it herself her entire life. Clementine is becoming her clone, and that thought makes Natalie's nausea return, sharp and sour at the back of her throat. She pushes through. Downstairs, the kitchen is set for filming. Shannon has arranged the herb boulet, the mason jars, the vintage rolling pin. Caleb walks through the back door, stamping snow from his boots. He is handsome, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who photographs well next to a farmhouse table. On camera, their marriage is a soft-focused dream, the way he kisses her forehead, the way he wraps his arms around her from behind while she stirs a pot. Off camera, the kiss he plants on her mouth during the morning shoot is performative and wet, and when he pulls back, Shannon kills the recording. Shannon, I'm so sorry, Natalie begins, but Shannon is already packing her gear. She says she will edit the footage later. She says it is no big deal. She leaves without accepting a muffin. Natalie watches her go and feels a prickle of something close to fear. Shannon is her gatekeeper, the woman who translates Natalie's life into content. If Shannon is upset, the content suffers. If the content suffers, the followers drift. And Natalie needs those followers. But the farm costs more than Caleb's inheritance covers. The online store, the sponsorships, the brand deals, all of it depends on the image of a woman who has never lost control of anything. But the morning is not finished with her yet. Target, Vanessa and the crack in the performance. The trip to Target is supposed to be errands, groceries, a new bottle of prenatal vitamins, the Starbucks order that makes the children behave for 20 minutes. Shh. Natalie brings 2 nannies and all 5 children, a small caravan of matching coats and carefully brushed hair. She is pushing the cart through the cereal aisle, Jessa strapped into the seat and Stetson begging for Cocoa Puffs, when a voice cuts through the fluorescent hum. Natalie? Natalie Heller? Oh my God. Vanessa. She has not seen her since high school, but the face is unchanged. The same sharp smile, the same expensive highlights, the same way of standing too close. Vanessa is pushing a cart containing only La Croix and a bag of organic kale. She looks Natalie up and down, taking in the pregnant belly, the children, the prairie dress with its high collar and long sleeves. So you really did it, Vanessa says. The whole Tradwife thing. I've seen your Instagram. Thank you, Natalie says. The word a reflex. I didn't say I liked it. Vanessa laughs. But seriously, what do you do all day? Like, honestly, just bake bread and have babies? Natalie's smile does not move. Inside her, something hot and poisonous uncoils. The old rage, the one she has been trying to pray away since she was 17. Vanessa was the girl in high school who called Natalie's long skirts Amish drag, who spread a rumor that Natalie's father left because the Heller women were insane, standing in the Target aisle. Natalie's mind runs through an entire list of responses she does not say aloud, and at the end of the list, she calls Vanessa a word she immediately asks the Lord to forgive. I run a business, Natalie says. A farm, a brand, a brand. Vanessa tilts her head. And what are your kids' names again? Clementine, right? And Stetson? Is that like the hat? Clementine, Samuel, Stetson, Jessa, and one on the way, Natalie says. Her voice is syrup. It was wonderful seeing you, Vanessa. She wheels the cart away before Vanessa can respond. In the parking lot, she loads the children into the Suburban with precise controlled movements, and then she sits in the driver's seat and grips the steering wheel until her knuckles whiten. The anger needs fixing. She knows this. She will fix it later. On the drive home, Clementine says she does not want to be filmed anymore. She says it quietly, staring out the window at the snow, and Natalie's foot nearly slips off the gas pedal. What do you mean, honey? I mean, I don't want to be in the videos. Not today, not tomorrow, I just don't want to. Natalie had never told Clementine she could refuse. The thought had genuinely never occurred to her. Filming the children was as natural as feeding them, clothing them, teaching them Bible verses. They were part of the brand because the brand was the family, and the family was the brand. She says, okay, because there is nothing else to say, but the word tastes like a surrender. When they arrive home, Natalie's phone buzzes. An email from Shannon. The subject line is blank. The body is 3 sentences. I can't do this anymore. I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're just confused. I'll send the footage. Shannon has quit. The producer, the gatekeeper, the woman with access to every raw video file and every off-camera conversation Natalie has had for the past year, gone. Then Caleb appears in the kitchen doorway, his face bright, his weight shifting foot to foot, the way he looked when he was about to ask for something he knew she might refuse. My father called, he says. He says it's time. Time for what? For me to run. Congress. The seat's open. He says the timing is right. Natalie looks at her husband. She looks at her phone with Shannon's email still glowing on the screen. She thinks about Clementine refusing the camera, about Vanessa's smirk, about the angry women and their endless comments and the 6 burner accounts waiting in her nightstand drawer. And somewhere deep beneath her ribs, in the space where she keeps the things she does not say aloud, Natalie begins to smile. 2 variables, her producer, her husband, taken care of in one fell swoop. She will manage the crisis. She always does. That night, she went to bed in the farmhouse she had paid a fortune to make feel like 1,855. The world she built. Natalie wakes shivering in total darkness. The cold hits her first, A deep, wet cold that has nothing to do with Idaho winter and everything to do with absence. No hum of the space heater, no electric glow from the hallway. The comforter under her fingers is wrong, stiff, thin, hand-stitched in a pattern she does not recognize. She fumbles for her phone on the nightstand and finds nothing but rough wood. This is the part where she begins to understand that something has happened. Her feet hit the floor, and the floor splintered, freezing, not the smooth reclaimed pine Caleb installed 2 summers ago. She stumbles into the hallway, calling for Caleb, for Clementine, for anyone. The house is dark except for a flicker of orange light coming from the kitchen. The laughter of children drifts toward her, and relief floods her chest. They are safe. They are awake. She has simply overslept. Then she rounds the corner. 4 children sit around a lit fireplace. 2 girls, 2 boys. The eldest girl is braiding the younger girl's hair with fingers that move in a rhythm Natalie knows, a rhythm she has performed herself 1,000 times. But these are not her children. Their faces are sharper, hungrier. Their clothes are ragged pioneer dresses and patched trousers, and when they turn to look at her, they do not flinch. They do not seem surprised. "Mama," the youngest girl says, "you're awake." The kitchen is identical to hers. The same layout, the same window placement, the same counter where she kneads her sourdough. But the counters are rough wood, the windows have no glass, and the fireplace is a real fireplace, not the decorative stone feature she and Caleb argued about during the renovation. Above the doorframe she sees carved letters, deep and deliberate. MAEVE, 1852, 1854. NaNoH, 1853. ABEL, 1854. And at the bottom, level with her own eyes, MAMA, 1855. The door bangs open, and a man fills the frame. Close crate. His face is Caleb's face, but older, harsher, the eyes gone cold and flat. He looks at Natalie like she is a misbehaving animal. "Where the hell have you been?" he says. "The children need breakfast." "This isn't my house," Natalie hears herself say. "You are not my husband." The man who looks like Caleb crosses the room in 3 strides and slaps her across the face. The world goes white, then black. A sound like a bell struck too close. Before she loses consciousness, Natalie hears herself say a word she has never spoken aloud in her life. The word is fuck. She says it directly into the face of a man who is and is not her husband. The slap is a door. On the other side of it, the life Natalie imagined for herself ends, and the life she actually built begins to show its bones. How she got here. Age 17. Natalie was 17 the first time she left home. The Boise airport, late summer, a one-way ticket to Boston Logan tucked into the pocket of a dress her mother had sewn by hand. Her mother stood at the security gate, one hand on Natalie's shoulder, one hand on her younger sister Abigail's head, and she said, "Be kind, Nat. You're smart. Everyone knows that. But smart isn't the same as good. Be good, be kind. That's all I ask." Natalie nodded. She did not tell her mother that she planned to let her intellect do the work. At Harvard, she believed intellect would matter more than likability. The girls in her high school had never liked her anyway, with her long skirts and her long hair and her refusal to laugh at jokes she did not find funny. In Boston, she would be among minds that valued substance over style. That was the plan. Her father had left when she was 10, running off with a woman from his bowling league. Her mother told the church he was no longer with us, which was technically true. Natalie did not cry. She did not look back. She remembered the story of Lot's wife, the woman who turned to salt because she could not stop staring at what she was leaving behind. Natalie resolved to never be that woman. She would face forward. She would climb. Harvard was not what she expected. The first night, her roommate Rena invited her to a pregame. Natalie wore a white blouse with a lace collar, a prairie skirt, her hair in a single thick braid down her back. She had never tasted alcohol before. A girl named Jess handed her something sweet and pink in a plastic cup, and Natalie drank it because she did not know how to say no. The second cup made her head swim. The third cup made the room tilt. "Are you Amish?" someone asked. "Orthodox," another girl guessed. "Mormon?" "No, FLDS, definitely FLDS," Natalie tried to explain. She was Christian, normal Christian. Her mother just liked old-fashioned things. The girls laughed, not unkindly, but with the casual dismissal of people who had already decided she was a curiosity, not a peer. Later that night, Natalie lay frozen in her dorm bed while Rena brought a boy back to the room. Natalie stared at the ceiling and listened to sounds she had never heard outside of marriage, sounds she had been taught were sacred and private and holy. She prayed, "Please send him home. Please make him leave. Please, please, please." The prayer went unanswered. When it was over, Natalie crept to the bathroom and vomited strawberry jam into the toilet. The stains on her white collar never came out. In the morning, she called her mother and said college was wonderful. She lied every Monday after that, for months. She lied about her classes, her friends, her happiness. She watched Rena tell other girls that she had been pressured, that the boy had been rough, that it was basically assault. Natalie had been in the room. She knew it was a lie. But she said nothing, because Rena's friends already hated her, and her own mother's voice echoed in her head, "Be kind, be kind, be kind." The lies grew teeth. A girl from her gender-studying seminar recognized her in the dining hall and said, "You're the one who argued with the professor about biological differences." And Natalie nodded. She had argued, yes. She had said that men and women were different, demonstrably, and that pretending otherwise did not help anyone. The professor had not been pleased. The class had buzzed with tension for the rest of the semester. Now a classmate was looking at her with something that resembled respect, and Natalie felt a hook set somewhere behind her sternum. She was not invisible. She was not a joke. She was someone with a position, an argument, a voice. The hook pulled. 2 weeks later, Rena announced that she could not live with someone who judged her. The fight that followed was operatic. Natalie pushed past the breaking point, called Rena a whore. Rena called Natalie a brainwashed cult victim. Natalie said she had been in the room, she knew Rena was lying, and Rena punched her in the mouth. The disciplinary committee approved Natalie's move to a single dorm. She stuffed a towel under the door and studied in silence, and she began Googling questions she could not ask her mother. Why do modern women hate men? Why do modern women hate kids? Why are modern women so unhappy? The internet had answers. Not good answers, but plentiful ones. And in the basement of a campus church, on a cold winter evening early in the spring semester, she met a tall, soft-eyed boy from California whose last name was Mills. The time machine. The farm was not an accident. Natalie chose it, pursued it, and paid for it with money that came with conditions. After the confrontation with Rena, after the lonely semester in her single dorm, after meeting Caleb Mills at that campus church event, Natalie began to construct a plan. And the plan required Caleb, but it was not about him. It was about what he represented. Land, legacy, the financial architecture of a family that had been wealthy since before the Civil War. Caleb was aimless and soft, a boy who had gotten into Harvard on his name and drifted through his courses on charm. When Natalie asked what he wanted to do with his life, he said he might like to teach kindergarten. She had to sit down for that. Kindergarten. The heir to a political dynasty, a man whose father was already planning a presidential run, and he wanted to finger paint with 5-year-olds. But the farm. On their first date, before she understood who his family was, Natalie had said, "I want a farm with chickens. I want to live near my mother." Caleb had latched onto the image like a drowning man grabbing driftwood. So when kindergarten teaching surfaced as his life plan, Natalie pivoted. She reminded him of the farm. She made it sound like his idea. She made it sound like destiny. 500 acres in southwestern Idaho, old-growth forest, an apple orchard, river frontage, surrounded by reservation land and silence. The owner was a grieving widow who initially refused to sell, but Natalie instructed her realtor to go $500,000 over the asking price. The property was theirs. The only problem was the money. Caleb's father Doug agreed to fund the purchase, $5 million, plus the cost of the renovation. But Doug did not give gifts. He made investments. More babies, he said, in the walnut-paneled office of the Mills estate, as if he were discussing a stock portfolio. "I want more grandchildren, you understand." Natalie understood. She nodded, she smiled, she felt the cage close around her, and she told herself the cage was a home. The renovation was Natalie's project. She fired the first contractor when he suggested modern insulation. She fired the second when he tried to install standard windows instead of period-appropriate wooden shutters. The third contractor, a tired man who had worked on historical restorations, asked a single clarifying question. Will you be wanting indoor toilets, ma'am, or would you prefer an outhouse? Both, Natalie said. I want it to feel real. It won't be real, the contractor said. You know that. Make it feel real. The contractor sighed. So you want a time machine? Yes, Natalie said. That's exactly what I want. And then one morning she woke up inside it. The time machine had swallowed her whole. The children in her kitchen were not her children. The husband in her bed was not her husband, and her 6-month pregnancy was gone. No baby, no bump, just the flat plane of her stomach and an ankle that ached from where the steel trap had bitten in, because when she tried to run, the woods had been waiting with teeth. She explored the ramshackle house, cataloging the wrongness. The floor plan was identical to her farmhouse, but everything was rotted, primitive, stripped of electricity and plumbing. A horse stood in the barn that was almost, but not quite, the horse she owned. The white nose patch was too wide. There was an extra patch by the belly. She walked to the outhouse, did what she needed to do, and then stood in the yard with her eyes closed. She clicked her heels together 3 times. There's no place like home, she whispered. She opened her eyes. The rotting farmhouse stared back. Shit, she said. The doorframe of the kitchen held the carved names. MAEV 1852, 1854. A child dead at 2. NOAH 1853, ABEL 1854, and MAMA 1855, her slot, her date. The year she was meant to die, or the year she was meant to begin. The eldest girl, the one who braided the younger girl's hair with that terrible familiar rhythm, was named Mary. Natalie learned this the hard way, after the slap, after the steel trap, after the fever that followed when Mary stitched her ankle with twine-like thread and no anesthetic. When Natalie asked the girl's name and heard the answer, her blood stopped. Mary, the name she and Caleb had chosen for the baby she was carrying, the name she had never told anyone, not even Shannon, not even her mother. The name she had whispered only once into the dark of her bedroom after the ultrasound. This place knew her. This place had been waiting. She limped on her bad ankle, watching the girl named Mary command the kitchen. Make soap, chop wood, scrub laundry with lye that cracked the skin of her fingers. The daily grind of this yesteryear was brutal and repetitive, good days and bad days strung together like beads on a fraying cord. On good days, she played the obedient wife and loving mother, forcing cheerfulness until it almost felt real. On bad days, she thought about leaving, about being killed, about whether any of it mattered. She still rose. She still did the work. She clung to the belief that someone was watching her, that her helpless beauty would eventually summon rescue. But no rescue came. Only the man who looked like Caleb, cold-eyed and certain, and the children who called her mama, and the snow that kept falling, and the knowledge that she built this world herself, nail by nail, lie by lie, and now it intended to keep her. Episode 2. Natalie meets Caleb to the divine bet. The fever breaks on a Tuesday, or what Natalie believes is a Tuesday. Days in yesteryear have no names. They are only light and dark, cold and colder, the rhythm of work and the blankness of sleep. She wakes to the smell of wood smoke and the sound of the eldest girl humming, the same tune her own mother hummed while hemming dresses, a hymn about gathering at the river. The coincidence scrapes at something raw inside her. The girl is stirring a pot over the fire, her back straight, her braid a thick rope down her spine. She moves with the confidence of a woman twice her age, and when she turns and catches Natalie watching, her expression is neither warm nor hostile. It is evaluative, a manager checking on inventory. You're awake, the girl says. Good, you can help with the wood. Natalie tries to sit up. Her ankle screams. The bandage Mary applied is stiff with dried blood and something yellowish. She remembers the trap, the teeth sinking in, the way her body kept running for a half step before the pain registered. She remembers the man who looks like Caleb carrying her back, her arm across his shoulders, his hand gripping her waist hard enough to bruise. She remembers the thread coarse, unsterilized pulling through her skin while she bit down on a strip of leather and tried not to scream. What's your name? Natalie asks. She has been here long enough to realize she never asked. She has been calling the girl you and her and, in her head, the older one. But now, watching her move through the kitchen with that inherited competence, she needs to know. The girl doesn't look up from the pot. Mary. The word lands in Natalie's chest like a stone dropped into still water. Mary. The name she and Caleb had whispered in the dark of their bedroom after the ultrasound. The name she had never typed into a phone, never spoken to her mother, never shared with Shannon or the nannies or a single living soul. The name she had guarded like a secret prayer. How do you spell that? Natalie hears herself ask. A stupid question, a stalling question, but her mind is scrambling for explanations. There must be a reasonable one. There must be. Mary spells it. Mary. The same letters, the same name. The coincidence is a door swinging open onto a black corridor, and at the end of that corridor, something is waiting. Natalie pushes herself up from the straw mattress. Her ankle howls. She ignores it. She takes a step toward the door, then another. Mary is watching her now, the wooden spoon suspended above the pot. Sit down, Mary says. You're not well. I need air. You need to sit. Natalie does not sit. She moves past the girl, past the fire, past the carved doorframe where her own name sits carved beneath the names of dead children. MAMA 1855. She pushes through the door and the cold hits her like a slap, but she keeps moving. The woods are 100 yards away, dense and dark and promising cover. She doesn't have a plan. She has only the animal certainty that she cannot stay in this house one more second. Not with that name hanging in the air, not with the knowledge that this place knows things it cannot know. She runs. Her ankle screams and something tears the stitching, probably, and hot blood slicks down into her bare foot. She doesn't stop. The trees swallow her, branches whipping at her face, the frozen ground cutting her soles. Behind her, she hears Mary shouting, and then a deeper voice, old Caleb's voice, bellowing something she cannot make out. The trap is hidden beneath a scatter of dead leaves. She doesn't see it. She doesn't know it's there until the steel jaws snap shut. The pain is not like the first time. The first time was a shock, a foreign invasion. This time, the trap closes on her injured ankle, on the fresh stitches and the swollen flesh, and the pain is a white-hot railroad spike driven through the center of her consciousness. She is on the ground. She doesn't remember falling. She is screaming, she thinks, but the sound seems to come from somewhere else, some other woman who made better choices and ended up in better woods. Old Caleb finds her. He pries open the trap with a tool she cannot see because her vision has gone gray at the edges, and then he lifts her as easily as he might lift a sack of flour. She is weeping. She is babbling. Somewhere in the noise, she hears herself say, "Please, I just want to go home. Please. This isn't my house. These aren't my children. Please." Old Caleb does not answer. He carries her back through the trees, back to the cabin, back to the fire and the carved doorframe and the girl named Mary, who is already threading a needle with something that looks like twine. Hold her down, Mary says. Old Caleb holds her down. The needle goes in. A boy in a church basement. The memory surfaces while she is weeping, while the thread pulls through her skin, while Mary works with the same focused calm Natalie once brought to editing her Instagram captions. The memory is of a church basement in Cambridge, a cold winter evening in the early weeks of her second semester. She had been attending the Christian student group for 3 weeks, sitting in the back, saying nothing, letting the hymns and the prayers wash over her without penetrating. She was not there for God. She was there for the free coffee and the silence of the walk home. Caleb Mills was sitting in a folding chair, holding a paper plate piled high with cheese cubes. He was not handsome. Exactly, his features were too soft, his shoulders too narrow, but he had the clean, unhurried look of someone who had never been hungry, never been afraid, never been told no. He looked up as she walked in, and their eyes met for a fraction of a second, and Natalie felt nothing. A flicker of recognition, perhaps. The acknowledgement that here was another body in a room full of bodies. She sat down. She did not look at him again. The second Sunday, he asked her name. The third Sunday, he asked where she was from. The fourth Sunday, he asked if she wanted to get coffee sometime. He was not charming. He was not witty. He told her, on their first date, that he was studying history but didn't really like to read. He asked her what she wanted out of life, and she said, "I want a farm. With chickens. I want to live near my mother." She said it without thinking, the old fantasy her mother had planted in her during those pioneer story nights, and Caleb's eyes lit up with an intensity that surprised her. He seized on the image like a dog seizing a bone. A farm, he repeated, like a real farm, with animals and everything, with chickens, she said, and mountains. He nodded slowly, as if she had just revealed the answer to a question he had been asking his whole life. They dated slowly, as their faith prescribed. No kissing, no touching beyond hand-holding, no time alone in apartments or dorm rooms. Natalie found the restrictions a relief. They removed the possibility of Rena's dorm room, the boy and the bed and the ceiling she stared at while praying for it to end. Caleb seemed content with the rules, or at least compliant, and she mistook his compliance for virtue. She mistook many things. She mistook his wealth for intellect. She mistook his softness for kindness. She mistook his need for direction for a willingness to be led. The engagement happened quickly, the way things in their religious community often did, years of nothing. Then the sudden lurch toward the altar. Caleb proposed at a restaurant his father had chosen, with a ring his mother had provided, a 4-carat antique diamond that caught the candlelight and scattered it across the tablecloth. Natalie felt embarrassed by its size and gleeful about its implications. She had been the weird girl in the prairie dress, the one they thought was Amish, the roommate who called Rena a whore and got punched for it. Now she was going to marry Caleb Mills, whose father was a name, whose family had money that reached back to before the Civil War, whose future was a blank check she could fill in however she wanted. At the engagement party, she watched Caleb's mother, Amelia, move through the room like a ghost in pearls. Amelia smiled at the right moments. She touched her husband's arm at the right moments. She disappeared into the background at the right moments, receding until she was barely visible, a smiling shadow in an expensive dress. Natalie's own mother pulled her aside that night, her hand cool on Natalie's wrist. "You know what you're choosing," her mother said. "It was not a question. I know, he will want you to be small. I know, do you want to be small?" Natalie looked at Amelia, at her vacant smile and her practiced ambivalence, and she thought, I am not her. I am smarter than her. I am stronger than her. I will not disappear. She turned back to her mother and smiled, and the smile was only half a lie. "I want the farm," she said. Yesteryear named. After the second stitching, Natalie does not try to run again. She cannot. Her ankle is a swollen ruin of torn skin and crude sutures, and the fever that follows the second trap burns through her like a grass fire. She drifts in and out of consciousness, her dreams populated by eyeless midwives and footless babies, by her mother's voice commanding her to get up, by the face of Rena in a Target aisle, sneering. When she surfaces, the cabin is always the same. The fire, the carved doorframe, the children moving through their chores with the weary precision of small adults. Mary is the one who forces her to eat. It is not kindness, Mary makes that clear. "You're no use to us dead," she says, and presses a wooden bowl of thin fish soup into Natalie's hands. "Eat, or I'll pour it down your throat." Natalie eats. The soup is watery and flavorless, but there is a biscuit alongside it, dense and golden and hot from the pan, and when Natalie bites into it, the taste is so familiar it makes her eyes sting. Her own recipe, her own sourdough starter, the one she fed every morning, the one she named Lazarus because it kept rising from the dead. This is not, her starter cannot be her starter, but whoever made this biscuit knows her recipe. "Who taught you to make these?" she asks Mary. Mary looks at her strangely. "You did." The fever climbs. Mary gives her something from a brown bottle, a red syrup that tastes of cherries and something bitter beneath. "For the aches and pains," Mary says. Natalie drinks it because refusing would require energy she does not have. The syrup pulls her down into a sleep that is almost peaceful. When she wakes, the youngest girl is sitting beside her bed. Maeve, the one whose name is carved above the door, the one who was supposed to die at 2 but who is still here, still breathing, still watching Natalie with solemn dark eyes. "What is this place called?" Natalie asks. Her voice is a rasp. Maeve leans close, as if sharing a secret. "Yesteryear," she whispers. "Yesteryear," the name of Natalie's Instagram account. The name of her brand, her business, her performance. The name she chose because it sounded nostalgic and safe and perfectly on brand for a homesteading tradwife with a sourdough starter and 6 children and a husband who wanted to teach kindergarten. She chose that name. She built this world. And now the world has built itself around her, and she cannot find the door. The name settles over her like a second fever. This is not a random abduction. This is not a nightmare or a coma dream or a psychotic break. This is deliberate. Someone or something has constructed a mirror image of her life and placed her inside it, and the mirror shows only the parts she never let anyone see. The violence, the hunger, the endless grinding labor, the children who look at her with wariness instead of love. When she is strong enough to walk, she limps out to the chicken coop with Maeve. The chickens have names: Teacup, Little Loaf, Mrs. Prince's Sweater. Maeve introduces them one by one, her small voice grave and ceremonial, and Natalie feels the presence of something broken in her skirt pocket. She fished it from the dirt near the coop this morning, half buried beneath a frozen clump of straw, a lapel microphone, the kind Shannon used to clip to her collar during filming. Black plastic, a tiny mesh grill, the wire severed and frayed at the end. The piece of equipment is not from 1855. It is from her world, her present, the life she left behind. She grips the microphone in her pocket and looks around the clearing, at the bare trees and the gray sky and the ramshackle outbuildings. If she is being filmed, she cannot see the cameras. If this is a reality show, the production values are extraordinary. But the microphone is proof that this world is not what it pretends to be. It is a set, a stage, a trap with an audience. A reality show, she mutters to herself. This reality show blows. Maeve looks up at her, confused, but Natalie does not explain. She is already recalculating. If this is a performance, then someone is watching. If someone is watching, there is a fourth wall. And if there is a fourth wall, it can be broken. She tucks the microphone deeper into her pocket and limps back toward the house. The body remembers. The year after Harvard, the year of the wedding and the move to California and the slow dawning horror of what she had done, Natalie learned to treat her body as a separate entity. A vehicle, a tool. The body could be pregnant and the mind could be elsewhere. The body could smile at her husband and the mind could be cataloging his failures. The body could kneel in church and the mind could be calculating compound interest. The wedding night taught her this separation was possible, even necessary. Caleb had claimed experience. He had implied a history, a series of girlfriends before he found faith, the usual sins of a secular upbringing. But when the lights went out in their honeymoon suite and he climbed on top of her, his body was all nervous hesitation and premature collapse. His penis was what bread dough would look like, she thought, if bread dough were half risen and very sad about it. He could not fully penetrate without her manual help, and when he did, it was over in seconds. He fell asleep immediately afterward, leaving her staring at the ceiling of another unfamiliar room, listening to another body breathe, and the parallel to Rena's dormitory was so sharp she had to press her fist against her mouth to keep from laughing, or screaming, or both. She had married a virgin who lied about being experienced. She had married a boy who needed his wife to help him achieve an erection. She had married a Mills, and the Mills name was supposed to mean power, competence, control. It meant none of those things. A year later, she was 6 months pregnant and leaving school. She ran into Rena on the quad, Rena in a rumpled blazer carrying a stack of LSAT prep books, Rena with dark circles under her eyes and a tension in her jaw that suggested sleepless nights. Natalie was glowing. She had mastered the glow. She had practiced it in the mirror until it looked natural. "I'm leaving," Natalie said. "The farm is almost ready." Rena stared at her. "You're dropping out? I don't need a degree to be a mother." Rena's expression flickered through something envy, maybe, or contempt, or a mixture of both, and then settled into a weary resignation. "Good luck," she said, and walked away. Natalie watched her go, one hand resting on the swell of her belly, and she felt a surge of triumph so pure it was almost sexual. She had won. Rena would spend her life climbing glass ceilings and navigating office politics and dying alone in a studio apartment, and Natalie would have the farm and the chickens and the mountains and the husband who adored her, even if he was terrible in bed. She had chosen the better path. She was sure of it. That night, she dreamed she was giving birth. Not one birth, all of them. Every labor, every delivery, all at once on her back under antiseptic lights, on all fours in a birthing tub, in a hospital bed with a doctor between her legs, on a dirt floor with a midwife who had no eyes. The babies poured out of her in a flood, and none of them had feet, and all of them were crying, "Mama, Mama, Mama," and she could not pick them up because her arms would not move, because she was pinned to the bed, because the man who looked like Caleb was holding her down, and Mary was threading a needle, and the fire was dying, and the snow was falling, and the name on the doorframe was her own. She woke, gasping, her hands clutching her flat stomach. No baby, no bump, just the scarred flesh where a pregnancy used to be, and the cold dawn light of yesteryear leaking through the unchinked logs of the cabin wall. Clementine, the first real crack in her performance, the performance of motherhood, not the performance of womanhood, came with Clementine's birth. Natalie had expected to feel the way the other mothers in her church described, an overwhelming flood of love, a spiritual awakening, the instantaneous recognition of her child's soul. What she felt instead was revulsion. The baby was placed on her chest, red and slick and screaming, and Natalie looked into her eyes and saw something malevolent. The eyes were coal black, depthless, the eyes of a creature that had arrived with an agenda. Natalie did not say this aloud. She knew it was wrong to think it. She knew it was probably hormones or exhaustion or the residue of the epidural, but the feeling did not pass. It stayed with her through the discharge, through the drive home, through the first night in the nursery. Caleb had painted a soft butter yellow. She lay in bed, listening to Clementine cry, and she prayed to die. "Please, God, let me not wake up. Please, please, please." The prayer felt familiar. It was the same prayer she had prayed in Rena's dorm room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds she was not supposed to hear. That prayer had gone unanswered, and so did this one. Her mother arrived the next day. She took one look at Natalie, the unwashed hair, the blank stare, the baby crying in the bassinet, and said, "You need to get up." "I can't." "You can. You have to. This is what being a mother is." Natalie's mother had a philosophy of motherhood, honed over decades and reinforced by scripture. Suffering was sanctification. Pain was purpose. A woman's body was not her own. It belonged to her husband, her children, and God, in that order. When Natalie tried to explain how she felt the malevolence in the baby's eyes, the certainty that Clementine was not really hers, her mother's face closed like a door. "You're tired," she said. "You'll feel better after a jog." Natalie went for a jog. It was what her mother wanted, and Natalie had been trained her whole life to do what her mother wanted. She laced up her running shoes, the new ones Caleb had bought her as a push present, and she ran through the neighborhood until her stitches tore open and blood ran down her thighs. She collapsed on the sidewalk, and her mother found her there, and instead of calling an ambulance, instead of showing alarm, her mother stood over her and said the same words she had been saying all morning. "Get up." Natalie got up. She walked home, bleeding through her shorts, and she climbed back into bed, and she looked at the ceiling, and she understood for the first time that no one was coming to save her. Not her mother, not Caleb, not God. If she wanted to survive this, she would have to save herself.